I see let's see, I see Joseph Davis from Los Angeles, Ryan Jackson from San Leandro, California, Kim Hitchcock, Cincy Professor, good to see you. Let's see here. James Keller, good to see you. David Green, El Paso. James out of Philadelphia. Clarence and El Haj and Laquana and Kendall and Karen out of New York City. I met them at the All Black National Convention. Good to see you again. Let's see, Mr. Jan Jasmine. Let's see, who else? I see Tara, but I don't see the last part of your name, Tara. But I did see that you were from West Palm Beach and Helen Hall Rivers. Sometimes it cuts off your name, so I can't see your whole name. So I'm sorry. I'd say Tara, but there's probably like more to your name. So, hey, Tara Redmond, there she is, Tara Redmond. Okay, all right. So, all right, everybody. So, Kim Crummy, I see you, and Helen Hall Rivers, good to see you too. And also, we got some people listening in from Instagram and stuff like that. Cousin Kenny, and all of you, good to see you. Good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, so a couple things, really quick. Don't forget that tomorrow night in the Black Business School, we're doing a stock options event. So if your goal is to increase your income, one guarantee I can make is that after we're done, if you have like a little bit of investing capital to put it where I sort of show you where I'm going to put my money, you will increase your income once you leave the event tomorrow. This is something that I can easily promise. I don't overpromise because it would be crazy to do that. But this is something that I know is going to increase your income. It's basically an introduction to our Prime program. And those of you that are in Prime, you guys come for free. So if you want to join the event for tomorrow, you can go to drboyceprime101.com. That's drboyceprime101.com. And it's 129. And actually, since you're in the book club, if you use the code book club 25, all one word, book club 25, it'll take 25% off the price. So you can get in for $96. And also what I'll do is I'll give you a direct link inside the Instagram chat so you guys can just take a look at it. If you want to come in for free by just jumping into the Prime program, your fee will be applied toward your first month of membership. Just go to Dr. Boyce Prime 101. drboyceprime.com. Scratch that. I said that wrong. drboyceprime.com is where you would actually join the Prime program. drboyceprime101.com is the 101 kind of introduction just to sort of bring you in. So if you're not a Prime member, then this will show you our world and you can judge it for yourself. The student satisfaction is through the roof. Students love it. And the reason we know that is because, all these conversations and stereotypes about Black businesses having bad customer service, that does not apply to the Black Business School. I have customer service people that are right here in the chat talking to you right now as we speak. And so we make sure our customer service is A1 pristine. We actually have something called the Net Promoter Score, and we're super proud of this. The Net Promoter Score measures how many raging fans you have, how much your customers are happy with what you're doing. Apple's Net Promoter Score is in the 60s. Harvard University's Net Promoter Score is in the 60s. Amazon's is in the high 60s, low 70s, I think. We're like 92 or 93. So we actually have better customer service than the best companies in America. And that's because when we started our organization, the first thing that we decided was to be customer obsessed. We really wanted to be obsessed with solving your problems and making your life better so that you'll be happy and you'll come back and you won't go like tell everybody that we're mean and crazy and we're cheating you, because we don't do that. So anyway, if you guys would like to take a look, just go to drboyceprime.com. If you'd like to just go ahead and join the Prime program and apply that first month membership to get free access to the event. Or if you just want to come to the event, you can go to drboyceprime101.com. And because you're a member of the book club, use the code word book club 25, all one word, book club 25. It'll take 25% off. And I also put a direct link inside the chat if you guys want to just hit the direct link. All right, so let's jump into Dr. Claude Anderson and his comments for today. This section, this book is called The Black History Reader. It's available at powernomics.com. And Dr. Anderson put a lot of energy into all his books. These books should be read by every Black person in this country. They always say that we need better schools. We need better schools. We need better schools. Yeah, we do. But you know what? We actually really kind of don't need better schools per se, in the sense that you have super smart, highly educated people, highly qualified Black people who are teaching every day online, right? So I think that we can replace the public school system with what we have right here for low cost, either cheap or free on the internet. So I don't think that we actually need, the oppressor teaching our kids. I don't think we need other people in order for us to get an education. We have plenty of educators in our community. So part of the reason that we do the book club every week is because I want you guys to be able to have access to the best education possible just by tuning in, just by coming and hanging out with us. And not only are we super smart, but we love you. And so Dr. Claude Anderson's books are one of these building blocks that I think should be incorporated into a Black educational system. I just did a conversation today with a rapper named Sugar T. Anybody remember Sugar T? Ooh, 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 I'm a ooh, right? Remember that? And she did the whole, see, I sound so stupid saying it because I don't sound as good as she does, but she did that song Sprinkle Me with her brother E40. And anyway, so I was just on the line with Sugar T, and we actually did a whole conversation. And we were just kind of talking about just sort of how our community gets misguided, and hip hop is part of what's been part of that process, right? And so one of the things that we definitely agreed on is that when Black people educate other Black people, there's love in the mix. Love is what can drive a good educational experience for our kids. Much more, it's actually much more important than just what you learn. And so I want us to just be in spaces where we're loved and respected and stuff like that. And so in that conversation with her, we were talking about just how as a community we kind of have everything that we need, and I tend to agree with that. And even our artists can be involved in this process, but we have to understand that everything that we take into our minds is going to influence who we are and how we think. And that's where she came to mind, because one thing she mentioned to me was that when she saw the crazy stuff happening in hip hop, she wasn't as persuaded and she didn't follow the crowd as much. And I said, of course you didn't, because you knew who you were. You grew up in the Bay Area, where you have a strong Black pride history. You had the Black Panthers right there in the Bay. So yourself, Tupac Shakur, who was like a really close friend of the family who would come over to the house all the time, the reason that they went into hip hop with a certain level of consciousness, pay attention now, they had a certain level of consciousness because somebody told them when they were kids who they were. Their educational process wasn't just going to school and learning from some lady from the suburbs. It was somebody telling you, okay, this is the history of your people. This is what you represent. This is what it means to keep it real. This is what it means to be Black. Blackness is most important. This is the best brand you'll ever be associated with. That goes a very long way. And so we were talking about her friend Tupac, and how I said if Tupac had lived, without the unfortunate events that took place that took his life, I said I think he would have turned into something better than what a lot of our artists eventually became. Jay-Z is a New Yorker, and he's a capitalist. New Yorkers are very capitalists, or they're very money oriented, very much able to acquire resources, right, and stuff like that. Nothing against them though. I love my people in New York, super smart people. But then there's something about that Bay Area culture of the Panther history and kind of fighting for something bigger than yourself that I think would have gone quite a long way in his life, right? So make sure your kids know who they are. That's the point. Make sure your kids know who they are. And I always get funny when people ask me what I do. I say I don't know. I'm kind of like, I want to be the Tupac of finance. I'm like the Malcolm X of economics. There we go. Anyway, so let me get gangster and start reading this book. All right, so let's get to page 34 in the book. This is the book called The Black History Reader. It's at powernomics.com. Everybody can get a copy. And Dr. Claude Anderson has a section called Rethinking Social Integration. And the question here is, has education been the great racial equalizer for Blacks? He says, education is a class bound by race, and has no magical powers to equalize social and economic conditions between Blacks and whites. Generations of Black children were indoctrinated to believe the pathway to success and racial equality was education, just as it appeared for white children. Schools have consistently presented a paradox for Blacks. First, if fortunate enough to get an education, a tool, they were limited as to where they could use their tool. There were few places within the Black community to apply their acquired educational tools, and if they ventured outside, whites would determine if they wanted and valued their Black labor. Interesting. Let's process this. This paradox placed Blacks not too far from where they had been in slavery. It was still hard for Blacks to earn enough to support their families. So what he's saying is that historically, educated Black people have had kind of a double whammy, similar to the Black business owner. Let me know if you know what I'm talking about. They had the dilemma that if I go off and get all this education, and this is still, tell me where any of this is still not true. If I go out and get all this education because I went to college or whatever, I can't really bring it back to my community because there's nowhere to apply these skills. Right? I know how to run a business, but there ain't no businesses to run. I know how to run a school, but ain't no schools that with the funding that I can come and run in my neighborhood. I have to get white people's permissions to even run Black schools because they control the money and the resources, right? But then if I go across town, and I say I'm going to apply my skills over there because there are more businesses and there is more funding, well, they get to decide if I even get an opportunity to apply the great skill that I have. Do you understand? They get to be the people who they get us into this what I call slave language. Slave language is, and I didn't even know it was slave language until I was about 40 years old. So forgive me if I offend anybody with this, but slave language is when you say, I just need them to give me an opportunity. If you give me an opportunity, we don't want nobody to give us nothing. Just open the door. We'll get it ourselves. James Brown used to say that. And I'm Black and I'm proud, right? And that was when I heard that, I was like, that's right. That's right. I don't need nobody to give me nothing. Just open the door and I'm gonna get it myself. But then I started getting older and I started asking more existential, higher frequency, higher vibrational, higher level questions like, well, if I'm waiting on you to open the door, who owns the damn door? How did the door get there? Who decides if the door is going to be open and shut? And why is there even a door in the first place? Why I got to walk through your door? Why do I have to leave the room I'm in to be in this land of milk and honey and opportunity? Are white people sitting around saying, we just need y'all to open the door to the Black community and then we can go in and create opportunities for ourselves? We'll starve if you don't open the door. Do you understand? Does anybody get what I'm saying? Like just how defeatist that language really is? That just how disempowering it can feel to just know that no matter how powerful and extraordinary you are, no matter how talented you are, your talent won't mean a thing until it is acknowledged and validated and accepted and retrieved or allowed to be expressed by the people who own the magical door. Well, screw you and your damn door. I don't need your door. I'm building a door. I don't want to be at your table. We can build tables too. In fact, I don't even need to talk to you about your door or your table because I can build tables and doors in my house, and I don't even really even I don't even want you walking through my door, let alone me walking through yours. I'm not walking through your door. You ain't got to walk through mine because we good over here. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? And I personally believe, economically speaking, that our children will be so much better off if they grow up with a fundamental understanding that doors and tables are actually built. That you can build a door, you can build a table, you can do all these things. You know, like when athletes, I talk all the time about NFL teams and these athletes that are begging to get 2% ownership of an NFL team. Like, we just want to be at the table. We just got to get it. We just want them to let us to the table. But I'm like, but remember, the founders of the NFL built their table. They were doing the work that you ain't willing to do. They made the sacrifice you aren't willing to make. They have the patience that you're choosing not to have. Back when they were buying the Green Bay Packers for $200 and the Chicago Bears for $150 and I'll sell you the New York Giants for $200, right? Oh no, that's too much. I'm not gonna pay for a football franchise $200. You crazy? I'm not gonna pay $200 for the New York Giants. These were real conversations, people. This is not made up. But what are the Giants worth now? About $5 billion. What about the Packers? Probably about $4 or $5 billion. Dallas Cowboys, almost $10 billion. I bet if the Cowboys were on the market right now, that team could sell for 10. If Jerry Jones said, I'm selling my Cowboys for $10 billion, Negroes included, you can have all this here property and all these here athletes, all these here big, strong Negroes for $10 billion, I bet you that somebody would make a bid. I bet you that he would find a bidder. But you think that was always the case? No, it wasn't. Somebody built a table. I'm not even mad at them for that. I'm not mad at you for building a table. I'm mad at us for not understanding the tables have to be built. So what Dr. Anderson is talking about is that we have to rethink what education really looks like. What does education look like? If I go to college and I go to some university and I go $100,000 in debt, so that I can learn how to function within a system that you create, own, and control, then I basically have put a clear glass ceiling on how much wealth and power I can actually acquire. I'm trying to succeed in a world that you created. It's like when I was a kid, we used to play Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know if anybody else ever played that. Maybe I'm the only nerd in the room who did, but we used to play Dungeons and Dragons. It's a crazy game where you would sit there and there'll be this person called the dungeon master. And the dungeon master would sit behind a big thing. He would have something big where you couldn't see what he was doing behind the whatever the board, and he would roll the dice and decide your fate. He would decide, if you're you'd have these different characters, like you'd have a warrior and a wizard and an elf with a big axe or whatever, or dwarf with an axe. I think the dwarfs had the axe and the elves had the arrows. But anyway, you have these, these mythical characters, and the dungeon master would decide what your fate was going to be, if the dragon was going to burn you up or if you were going to get a chance to live. And so effectively, when you enter into someone else's world, you're going into a space where you're a character and they're the dungeon master. It's like you're in a cartoon and you're Homer Simpson and they're the animator that decides if Homer is going to live or die in this episode and what's going to happen to Homer. I don't want to do that. So the best way to succeed in that world is not to try to succeed in the world and fight against whatever forces they create to sort of block you to get whatever you think you want. I think one option is to walk away from that world and just say, no, I'm going to create my own space. Thank you very much. I don't want to play that game. I'm going to create a game and you're welcome to come play with me. Okay. So what Dr. Anderson is talking about is that educated Black people have a double frustration. Your dual frustration is that you come home from college, you got all these skills, your community has no infrastructure in place that will allow you to apply these skills, which means that the number one educational objective for young Black children who have potential should be to develop infrastructure for the Black community. You have to have that infrastructure. Number two, when you decide to go to places where your skills are going to be utilized, they get to decide if they're going to acknowledge you or not. So a lot of you had very hardworking great grandparents who did what they were supposed to do. They became the bricklayers and the masons and the carpenters and the plumbers. But the unions, when they went up north, that's where white people loved us. Apparently, that's what they tell us anyway. It's all nonsense. But they would go north to New York City looking for jobs, and the unions were like, no, we don't share resources with people who don't look like us. You're not coming to Boston and joining the police force, because the Irish, we got this. We got the fire department and the police department, or whatever. I can't remember which group. I think the Irish might have had both or something. I'm not sure, but you get the point, right? So anyway, let me keep going here. He says, education, generally considered the mechanism for upward class mobility, has been an issue for Blacks since the founding of this nation. First, it was against the law and public policies to teach a slave to read or write. Any person caught teaching a slave to read or write would suffer 39 lashes with a whip and a fine of $100. Ain't that crazy? And a lot of our kids don't even want to read now. You could whip them. You could give them 39 lashes for not reading. They'll still stay ignorant. Some of them, you could offer them $100 to learn how to read. They won't take the money. It's kind of weird, right? This is how they've gotten us backward. This is mind control, people. This is in our face. Following the Civil War, after nearly 360 years of slavery and being denied an education, approximately 5 million penniless, landless, jobless, uneducated, unclothed, homeless, and unprotected Blacks were set free to wander the countryside. Let's freeze on that for a minute. This goes back to what my friend Julian Gordon, he spoke at the convention. This is one thing that he always said that I really loved. Julian said the slaves were not freed, they were fired. They weren't freed, they were just laid off. And one of the things that you have to really sort of process is when you talk about what freedom looks like, understand that when you don't have resources, you're not really free. You can't be free without resources. It's almost impossible. If I control you economically and you are working for me and I'm your only source of income, I'm your only source of financial security or economic well-being, and you have a bad day. Let's say that I'm mistreating you and I'm just being a mean guy, and you say, this ain't right, you shouldn't treat me like this. And then I say, well, you're free to go. But let's say I know you have nowhere to go. I know you ain't got a car. Let's say that we're dating too. We're dating and I pay all the bills. But you don't have a car, you don't have family nearby, you don't have any skills to get a better job, to get a job. You have no options, right? And I say, well, you're free. You don't have to be here. And I basically put you between a rock and a hard place. Are you truly free in that situation? I mean, do you really have freedom? Or am I kind of designing a matrix where I am squeezing you into a spot. So I'm not telling you to go in that spot, but the system I've designed for you pushes you in that corner where you have no choice but to make the choice. Do you understand? It's like in mathematics, we have a rule. You know, you guys know I taught math at the University of Kentucky. I think about everything mathematically. That's why I'm always thinking about dimensions and planes and all that. We get into all that with mathematics. So here's the thing. We have this thing in mathematics where we basically have, there's a rule that says if you have in an equation, if you have enough variables, a certain number of variables that you know, then the last variable that you don't know is automatically going to just pop out, right? It's going to pop out, right? I don't have to pick it. It's just, it's the equation will give me the solution, right? So what do I mean by that? It means that if I say x plus 2 equals 7, well, and then I say, well, pick whatever x you want. Well, you can't do that. You can't pick a different x other than 5. The only way x plus 2 is going to equal 7 is if x is 5. So if I pick the other number, if there's two numbers on the left side of that equation and I pick one of them, I control the first one. I say, well, I don't care what number you pick for x. Follow me now. Let me know if you guys follow me. I don't want to, I get accused sometimes of talking, being hoity-toity and talking too fancy with black folks, and they get mad at me because they think I'm like talking over people's heads. But I think you're smart, intelligent people and you can get this. I'll explain to you, I promise. So if I say that x plus 2 equals 7, right? And there's two numbers on the left side of the equation, one number on the right. I pick the first number, I pick the 7, and then I pick the 2, and I say, but you get to pick the x. Am I really giving you a choice? Or am I giving you the illusion of choice? Because you can't pick anything other than a 5. Like there's no other space. Like now, if I said there's two numbers on the left side and you get to pick them both, then that's different, right? I'm giving you more what they call degrees of freedom. You got more wiggle room, right? You can say, okay, well, I want the first one to be a 4, and then the second one's going to be a 3. I want the first one to be a 92, and the second one has to be negative 87, 85, right? Like you can do that. You can absolutely do that. But if I tell you that the first number on the right side of the equation is a 7, the second one is going to be a 2, what's the last one? You get to pick. I haven't given you any choice. I'm just simply asking you to complete the process that I developed, that I control. I'm the dungeon master, and you are simply a victim of whatever little trap I've created for you. Oh, welcome to American politics, by the way. This happens in every election, by the way. This illusion of choice happens in every single election, right? So, because most of y'all, I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, or Independent, but I bet you that if I took a poll right now, 90% of you would, if you were given an option other than Trump or Biden, you would definitely choose option C. Right. So, but again, just for the record, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent. I really don't. As long as you're black first. Right. So I think that there has to be space for that conversation. Let's keep going. All right. So following the Civil War, after 5 million penniless, so this sentence, this is deep. So Dr. Anderson explains, after the Civil War, nearly 360 years of slavery and being denied an education. So they have no education. They don't even understand how the world works. Approximately, can you imagine how scared they must have been? Approximately 5 million penniless, landless, jobless, uneducated, unclothed, you ain't got clothes, homeless, and unprotected blacks were set free to wander the countryside. I think we should just process that, just because I think we should really take a moment and really meditate on and reflect on how our ancestors must have felt, like what they went through. Can you imagine being dropped on, like, I don't know, in another country and with no money, no food, no clothes, no education, no knowledge of where to go, nothing. I mean, that's crazy. And for them to have done what they did, see, this is the part that burns me up. I'm telling you, it makes me so angry that I will hear about people who literally got off the plantation and were able to better educate children than we can today. Our kids were better educated by these broke, landless, penniless slaves than by some of these Negroes on TV. Some of these fancy $1 million Negroes in the NFL, NBA, working for big corporations and running $1 billion school systems. And a bunch of these kids are coming out, can't even read at grade level. The majority can't. And I'm just flipping out over how our ancestors, by being efficient with their resources and being determined and knowing that nobody's going to do anything for them. See, this is where I think integration messed us up. They knew nobody was going to come save them. There was no waiting for Superman. Superman wasn't coming, so they were on their game. They had family. They had grandma and Big Daddy getting on them and forcing them to do their best, right? And that is a value. That is a cultural norm that we lost. We lost that. So many of our people now are so damn weak. All they know how to do is whine, and cry and not do a damn thing. And our ancestors, no money, no jobs, no land, no opportunities, no weapons, no protection, no nothing, were able to do a better job at educating kids, owning businesses, and owning land than we can today. I think we should be ashamed of that. I think they're rolling over their graves right now. I don't think they like what they're seeing from us. We've been made weak as a community. We just have. Let's keep going. Some public and private schools were set up by sympathetic churches, abolitionists, and individuals to teach blacks manual skills and to be subservient. Congress established the Freedmen's Bureau, a government agency to aid the transition of former slaves to a life of freedom. Before it became dysfunctional, the Bureau funded what are today known as historically black colleges. Those schools started as elementary type schools, grew and progressed to high schools, teachers' colleges, and finally to full colleges and universities. Although 96% of blacks were suffering from planned ignorance after the Civil War, they believed in the possibilities of an education. They believed that if they acquired education, reading, writing, and deciphering, they could overcome imposed ignorance and become a self-sufficient and competitive group. Blacks diligently pursued education in the new schools. Parents went all out to make their children attend whatever school was available, whether public, private, or religious missionary schools. During the 30-year time period between 1866 and 1896, former slaves set an educational achievement record that has yet to be broken by any racial or ethnic group. Pay attention now. I mean, seriously, we got to sit. I mean, I think we just got to really consciously celebrate what they were able to do. Listen to this. So during a 30-year time period between 1866 and 1896, right after slavery up until the turn of the century, former slaves set an educational achievement record that has yet to be broken by any racial or ethnic group. This is what Black excellence looks like, Diddy. I say Diddy because I saw Diddy with a picture of Cardi B and he put Black excellence, and I wanted to report his page because it pissed me off. That ain't Black excellence. This is Black excellence, y'all. This is Black excellence. No disrespect to Diddy, but this is Black excellence. When slavery ended in 1865, approximately 98% of Black Americans were illiterate. By 1896, Blacks had reduced their illiteracy rate by more than half, from 98% to 45%, without public schools, by the way. They educated themselves faster than the 26 million Europeans who entered the country during the same 30-year time period with nearly the same illiteracy rate as ex-slaves. Never in recorded history has an enslaved race or ethnic group reduced their illiteracy rate by 50% within a 30-year time period. I'm getting emotional reading this. This is making me feel good. I don't know. I'm getting excited reading this. So we did something that had never been done before. This is awesome. But here's the problem though. Education was not an equalizer. While blacks were achieving while they were achieving educationally, the expected benefits were not accruing to them. The 26 million immigrants were being installed over them as a management and ownership class with a lower educational achievement rate than blacks. Newly arriving Europeans outdistanced blacks in employment, business, politics, and income. Unfortunately, higher class status and monetary benefits that typically follow academic achievement did not follow Black educational achievement. The European whites became business owners, managers, administrators, and prominent public servants. Blacks with greater educational achievement simply became low-level workers and domestic servants. So this is what Dr. Anderson says. By the way, the book is called The Black History Reader. It's on powernomics.com. Everybody should have a copy. You should read this out loud with your family. I believe you should. So here's what I want to ask you about this last paragraph, though. So Dr. Anderson says here that despite all these educational achievements, despite all these Black people getting advanced degrees, and degrees on every level, they still weren't getting the economic opportunities that they thought they were going to get. They still found that in a system, controlled by another ethnic group, they weren't getting the same benefits and opportunities as other ethnic groups. Surprise, surprise. Give me a yes or no really quick. Yes or no? Do you think that that's still true today? Like, do you think that is still true today? And y'all know what my answer is. I'm kind of rigging the question, to be honest with you. Do you think that a Black person who goes to college, makes good grades, does the right thing, is good at what he does, is going to get the same professional opportunities that he would receive if he were not Black? Like, do you really think that that's going to occur? Has that? Give me a yes or no. Do you think that does that make sense? What do you think about that? Like, do you think that that's going to happen, or do you think that maybe it's time to sort of look at the writing on the wall? Because here's the thing. I'm really trying to understand how we could be so damn thick-headed. I really am. I'm really trying to understand how it is that Dr. Anderson is referring to what happened to former slaves. He's explaining that the slaves were confused, former slaves, or really they weren't even slaves. They were human beings that they were enslaved, that they weren't slaves, they were people, right? But he's saying that that those who got out of slavery were sad and confused and disappointed because they thought education was the great equalizer. So they went ahead and they got the degrees, they learned to read and write, they were prepared to work hard, and they didn't get the same opportunities that everybody else was getting. So what I'm looking for here is, I'm going to ask you a basic question. At what point are we going to engage in an adequate amount of intergenerational information transfer, knowledge transfer, so that the children aren't making the same mistakes as their parents? That the descendants aren't doing exactly what their forefathers and foremothers did. I'm talking to all my fellow educated Negroes up in here. I'm talking to all of y'all who, like myself, got the advanced degrees and the BAs and the BSs and the MAs and MSs and PhDs and JDs and all these other letters behind your name that make you feel special. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm trying to figure out, at what point are we going to understand this and accept this as our reality? And because I kid you not, I hear all the time from people that will tell me, oh yeah, I've been working at Bank of America, Dr. Boyce, and I got an MBA, and I worked just as hard as the white lady, and they gave her the promotion and didn't give it to me. Or I apply for all these jobs and I know I'm qualified, but they won't give me the job because right? The corporate plantation frustrates all of us, right? A lot of us have experienced that. And I think that there just has to be like this memo. There should be a t-shirt that's literally on the t-shirt. I want to wear a t-shirt that says, "You ain't white." Like, literally, you ain't white. I hate to break it to you, but you ain't white. You can't go into a business owned by other people and expect that they're going to treat you like you're one of their own. It just, that life does not work that way. You're not white. So I think I'm gonna get a shirt that says, "You ain't white." But you are Black. That's the good news. The bad news is that you ain't white. But the good news is that you're Black. Right? So if you're in a football game, right? And you play for the Dallas Cowboys, and you keep wondering why the guys who are wearing the New York Giants uniforms keep tackling you. Well, the bad news for you, Forrest Gump, is that you don't play for the Giants. You're not I know you think those are your teammates because they keep saying nice things to you, but those are not your friends. They're going to keep tackling you, Forrest, every time you touch the ball. But the good news is that you do have teammates over here, and they're going to actually block for you. They're actually going to create opportunities for you to score. Right? So I think that for us, we get it twisted. We think that we're on a team that we're not on. We think that we're like in a football game where we think that the defensive players are on offense with us. We think that they're our friends. We think they're going to help us score when their job is to tackle you. We think that they're going to help us move down the field when their job is to steal the ball from you. Their job is to take everything that they can get from you. They're there to compete with you. You're there trying to be friends with them, and that's not your fault all the time. It's because you were miseducated. You were lied to. Somebody fooled you into thinking that you've got more friends than you actually have. And Dr. Anderson, God bless him, the number one thing Dr. Anderson really has taught people, this is one of the top 10 in terms of the important things that he's taught with this brilliant man that he is that Black people don't really have any friends. And there are lots of other great thinkers who have shared this idea, Francis Cress Welsing and many others. Professor James Small helps us understand this. There's a lot. It's too many to name. But I really think just starting with this basic idea that we really don't have any real friends. We have people that kind of might be allies in a certain context, or maybe people that just aren't really trying to be harmful. They're not necessarily doing any damage. But at the same time, if you really look around and you say, who's really the friend of the black man? Like, who's truly, I'm talking about truly been the friend of the black woman, the friend of the black family, who's really in a leadership position anyway, advocated for policies, created possibilities that improve the conditions of black people, that improved the wealth levels of black people. At what point are they really writing big checks and really giving you not just economics, but economic power? Where is it? Who are the politicians that are advocating for black people to run schools, to say basically, look, these are black children, so you should be educating those children, and all of the billions of dollars in contracts that come with providing books and food and services to those schools, that should go to you because those are your kids that somebody's making money from. So these billions in government funding should go to you. Who's the politician? You name one politician who has gone through the country successfully and advocated for this idea, very basic idea, that the people who should be making money off of black people should be black people. I'll wait. Find them. They don't exist. Or the politician who's really fighting for black people to receive $13 to $14 trillion in reparations with no strings attached, just checks and buildings and resources and assets that would go in the hands of black people and black organizations that would go directly to benefiting the black community. Who's doing that? Nobody. And a lot of that is because there's nothing in human nature that I've ever seen that makes powerful people want to give away their power without it being taken from them, without a fight. People just don't share power without a fight. So effectively what I'm seeing here is, in terms of learning something from the ancestors, first of all, I think we can learn a lot from their resilience and their commitment and being able to do what they did, right? But then also the mistake they made that we should not make is this somehow believing that we should be educated by our oppressor. I'm sorry. People think I'm racist for saying this. I don't care. I don't give a damn what you think. I think black children are best educated by intelligent black people. I say intelligent black people because some of these Negroes are crazy. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Trauma is real. That's the number one problem in our community. We got real trauma that causes real behavioral dysfunction. I cannot side with everything a black person does just because they're black. I can't do that. Some of our people are sick, right? And including myself. I'm sure I've got issues to work through, but at least I'm going to therapy and working to become a better person, right? So all of us are affected by this thing. So I'm not looking down on anybody. I'm just telling you the truth. But I believe that black children should be educated by black people. I also believe that black people should be working with other black people. When I was working with good black people, intelligent black people, I found that the workplace related trauma that I experienced on the corporate plantation dropped by about 95%. Every now and then, something sneaks through the cracks, something ghetto happens, and I get really mad. Sometimes I get mad at my people, right? Sometimes things happen and you're like, why? Come on now, seriously. But 9 times out of 10, 95% of the time, when I have a challenge at work or something goes wrong in a negotiation, we sit down, we talk about it, everything's good. There's no walking away feeling angry and frustrated or unheard or disrespected or whatever. Like that just doesn't, I don't feel that. So really, I advocate for this idea that for your children and for yourself, you want to aim to create a protective bubble of some sort, right? My protective bubble is that when I get up in the morning, I don't have to leave the house to go work for somebody who doesn't like me. I don't have to spend time around people who don't appreciate or respect me for who I am. I spend time with my wife. I spend time with my kids. I spend time working with people that care about me, right? That's a different experience. And I think that infrastructure for your life can be built at an early age, especially. It can be created, right? But it has to be intentionally and consciously created, because if you don't have some intentionality and consciousness in terms of how you structure your life and the lives of your children, well, then the system steps in. The system says, no, hand your child to me, send them to my school. I'm going to pour all kinds of stuff into their head and shape them into who they are. I'm going to give them their value system. I'm going to tell them what their priorities should be, to the point where you won't even recognize your child because you're so busy off at the corporate plantation working with your boss, right? You've got your boss, I'm your child's boss. And then when your child gets old enough, then we're going to let them have a different boss, right? And after the university finishes pimping them out and making all kinds of money from them, at that point, then they go to the corporate plantation where they can spend the rest of their lives pretending like they're actually going to be able to make enough money to pay off their student loans, which for 70% of Black people, it never happens, right? At least I want to say half of all Black college graduates can't even pay their student loans. Half of them default, right? So this is a failed process. This is a failed process. Education is not the great equalizer for Black people. Education is valuable. Knowledge is extremely important. Knowledge and education are very different things, but still education, knowledge, everything related to that is extremely important. But you have to really understand what the goal is. And so to sort of give you a quick assessment of how you might want to process education, I'm going to introduce you to an idea that we do in math called dynamic optimization. It's a very simple idea. The idea of dynamic optimization is that if you want to accomplish a goal, you start at the end and you work your way backward. The most efficient way to solve a problem is not to play checkers, it's to play chess. It's not to think about where you are and the next move, it's to think 20 moves down and think about where you want to end up. And then you back up, you backpedal to the point where you figure out what your next move is, right? So if you're thinking about education, the best way to educate a Black child should be to start with a simple conversation. What is the goal? What is the goal? I got this 2-year-old. I want this child to be free. I want this child to be powerful. I want this child to be successful. I want this child to win. What is the goal? Well, okay. So maybe a way to do that is I'm going to imagine my daughter when she's 30. What does a 30-year-old Black woman care about? What is she thinking about? Well, at that stage, she's probably thinking about relationships or marriage, maybe running a family, starting a family. Right. So maybe having a child is something that's important to her. She's going to need to have money. Right. Money does not buy happiness. Money does not buy happiness. Money will never buy you happiness, but money will give you the day off from work so that you can sit around and contemplate on what's going to make you happy. Right. That's what money can do. So she's going to need money like every other 30-year-old. And then maybe some things related to her physical and mental health are going to be important also. Right. If she's not physically healthy or mentally healthy, then nothing else really matters. Right. So the way I'm going to educate this 2-year-old is going to be based on what I see her valuing and needing to have in position when she's 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 years old, right? So because in her 30s, she's a mom now, she's running a household now. So her education should include all the skills required for her to be able to manage the life that she's going to have at that point. And I'm not even talking about training her to go work for a company or whatever. Sure, that might happen, but really, I really just want her to be in a position to manage the business called her life. Her number one business to manage, for my kids anyway, the number one thing I want them to be managing is their lives, right? Their lives as if it's a business. So your life, the business, can be broken into 3 major categories: health, wealth, and relationships. Physical and mental health, your economic health, financial security, cash flow, things like that, and then your relationships. What kind of man is she going to be married to? What's their relationship going to be like? What kind of wife is she going to be? What kind of husband is she going to select? Because if she picks wrong, then guess what? I just talked to a friend this week whose husband stabbed her to death in front of their daughter. It happened in Houston, was all over the news. So picking the wrong spouse nullifies everything, right? So even that has to be part of her educational process. Do you understand? So when I am thinking about education in the Dr. Boyce School for Children, the educational process I would advocate for would be one to say, what does a quality life look like for this child when they're in their 30s and beyond? And how do they have the skills to create that life and then to manage and protect that life once they built it? Right. So that means that she's getting educated on what to eat, what not to eat, so she doesn't lose all her wealth trying to cure diabetes and obesity and heart disease and all these other problems that come from eating all the crazy food that they sell us. We're going to work on mental health, where she's going to learn how to love herself, right, and know who she is. A lot of mentally ill Negroes out here don't know who the hell they are, right? So we're going to work on that. We're going to work on mental health, self-esteem, making sure she understands her background, her heritage, what she's representing, who she is, right? Then we're going to go into maybe wealth. Okay. Baby girl, you're going to know everything there is to know about economics that I can teach you. I'm going to make sure that not only you know how to fire the gun, but you're gonna have an arsenal full of weapons. You're gonna have every weapon you need economically, and every tool, every shield, every sword. You're going to be an economic ninja, because for Black people, economics is the quickest pathway to slavery. That's how they enslave you. That's how they control you, because this is what they do in a capitalist society. In capitalism, wealth and money are the weapons and tools that are used to enslave other people. So you need to be able to protect yourself. I'm going to give you economic self-defense. That means we're going to learn all about what financial security looks like, what good spending habits look like, how money is connected to psychology, meaning like the wealth mindset versus poverty mindsets. We're going to talk about consumerism and how consumerism is connected to low self-esteem, where they basically sell you your self-esteem in the mall. And that's why Negroes run to the mall to get the latest iPhones and the latest Jordans and the latest what Gucci bags, right? We're going to learn all these things. So you have the highest level of economic consciousness. You're going to understand where the money's located, how to get it. So you will be going in thinking about real estate and owning a business and investing in stocks. And then the last thing I'm going to do for you is I'm going to do little things like, again, in the Black Business School, we have that $5 a day investing plan. And I'm going to make sure that we're investing for you now. We're planting your garden now, your economic garden now, and it's going to have plenty of time to grow. And by the time you're 20, you're going to be sitting on $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. So can't nobody mess with you. So what does that mean? That means that no man can come into her life and say, hey girl, if you sleep with me, I'll help you finish paying your rent. She doesn't have to go through life stressed out because she hates her job and can't quit it because she's got to figure out a way to pay the bills. Right? She knows who she is. She's not been convinced to be a Megan Thee Stallion bad bitch who don't need no man, who's struggling through life trying to figure out a way to take care of a baby by herself. Right? Because I didn't even get to the last area, relationships. Right? You're trained. Again, this should all be formally intentionality. That's the key. That's what I'm saying. Intentional greatness, intentionality. Right? So intentionality means I'm also going to put you through relationship school. We're going to learn how we do relationships. We're going to learn how we resolve conflicts. We're going to learn how we choose the right friends, how we choose the right partner, how we respect ourselves and respect other people, how we can cooperate with the group. And you know what you're doing there? You're not just creating better outcomes for her in terms of her relationships with men and friends and everything else, but you're also making her a better businesswoman. Because somebody who knows how to manage relationships is the kind of person who makes an extraordinarily good business partner. People who are good at relationships are really good with business. Like I do a lot of business with a guy named George C. Frazier. George Frazier, he's joining us in the Black Business School, by the way. George Frazier is the kind of guy where I could get on the phone and say, man, F you, man, you suck. I hate your guts. And he would say, really? Okay, so tell me, how do you feel? Like, what's going on here, boys? Are you okay? Like he would literally know how to handle that. He wouldn't say, well, I hate you too, or F you, or I'm coming to your house and I'm gonna bring my gun, just all these trauma responses that we see from people that are not trained in relationship management. That costs you. You lose things when that happens. You lose vital parts of your life, right? So if I'm educating my child, I'm gonna do it myself. And with the help of the internet, right? Just go get resources off the internet and train that child on everything they need to know to be a healthy, successful Black person. Because what's the consequence if you don't? Well, the consequences if you don't is if you ever watch any reality TV shows with young Black people on them, you'll see a lot of people that are in significant emotional and financial and spiritual despair. They're incredibly unhealthy physically and mentally. They're dying. Some of them are on drugs, which is their coping mechanism to deal with unaddressed trauma. They're putting themselves in one terrible situation after another. Many of them end up disease infested because their sexual behavior is not mature in terms of how they go about choosing what situations they put themselves in. Their lives are becoming a complete mess. Babies, mamas everywhere, baby daddies everywhere, just chaos, just a very sloppy existence. And then when the consequences come a knocking, when bad things happen, when that boy who's out of control, getting high and drunk every day gets shot by the police or whatever, we say, oh, it's racism, it's racism, it's racism. Yeah, it's racism, but you still could have done something about it. You still could have protected your child. These kids are still our kids. And I think it's very important for us to stop trying to make friends with people and start really doing what's required. Like even when I'm talking to you, I can't sit around and wonder if my words are going to offend anybody. I don't care if it offends anybody. I'm doing what I think a father is supposed to do. I'm one of the men of the community. And one thing I learned from watching my dad is that there's a point where a man has to just say what needs to be said, and he can't worry about people's feelings and whether or not I got friends on the internet, whether or not somebody don't like what I said. I'm sorry. If you don't like it, don't listen. I'm here for the people that want to hear it. So educate your own damn kids. You control this thing. Nobody else. Nobody else. Nobody else. No excuses. Let me keep reading here. All right. So Dr. Anderson says that during the 30-year time period, hold on, let me make sure I'm starting at the right spot. This is page 35 of the book, The Black History Reader, which is on powernomics.com. So he says, during the 30-year time period between 1866 and 1896, former slaves set an educational achievement record. We mentioned that. Okay. And let me see here. Okay. Let me make sure. Okay. By 1920, blacks again reduced their illiteracy rate, this time by 20%, which was equal to that of Jewish and Asian immigrants entering the country. By the 1950s, the national illiteracy rate of Black Americans was down to 16%. Yet, pay attention now, integration's creeping into the room. Yet, when the Black Civil Rights Movement began in the 60s, blacks with a college education did not earn as much as white high school dropouts. So black people with a college degree did not earn as much as white people who dropped out of high school. Black Americans in general earned only 56 cents for every dollar earned by whites. In the 10-year period between 1966 and 1976, the earnings ratio of blacks moved up to 66 cents for every dollar earned by whites. The nation entered the 21st century with Black Americans attaining even greater educational achievements. However, their income has dropped. It's reverted to 56 cents for every dollar earned by a white person. So you're going backwards. You are literally busting your butt to hustle backwards. That's what he's saying. That the progress that was made has actually gone in the other direction. So he says here, David O. Sears, author of Racialized Politics, The Debate About Racism in America, argues that whites' accusation that blacks need more education provides a facade for hiding white racism. It misdirects blacks to search for power in education to propel them into upward mobility rather than searching for power in economics. So there it is. That's the answer. The answer is not just the education. It is the economics or the economic education. At least get the economic education before you get the formal education, or separate the education. There are, first of all, there's just education where you just learn a bunch of stuff that's just in your head, and I don't know what you do with that. But then there's like skills-based stuff, right? You learn how to be a librarian or a nurse or something. Those are good things. Those are good skills to have. Now, but you're still stuck a little bit. You're still stuck within a construct within an existing system where you're searching for jobs from people that have proven that they don't really hire black people as much. Even institutions as high level as Harvard University are heavily discriminatory in their hiring. Elena Kagan, who's on the Supreme Court, they called me, the White House called and asked me in 2012-ish to support and endorse her nomination to the Supreme Court when I went on MSNBC. And I said, I'm not going to do that because in 6 years of being the dean of the Harvard Law School, she did not hire a single black man or black woman. I said, I'm not going to support a racist. You can do that if you want. Maybe y'all think she's okay because she's down with Obama, but I know racism when I see it. I'm not stupid. I can't make myself dumb enough to believe anything that you're saying right now because the track record says everything. Now, so the racism is there. Now, the third type of education would be where you have education that actually gives you the skills you need to have the life you want. We talked about that earlier, but then also even those who get the formal education, right? So even if you're sending your child to college, that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. I'm not an anti-college guy. I want to make that clear. But that nurse, let's say, or that accountant, or whatever it is that you're trained to do, get that education that's outside the walls of the construct within which you operate. Sure, your skills that you get as an accountant or a nurse will get you that job if you're lucky. But that is not going to get you the financial security you deserve. Do you understand? You need that extra education, that after-school education that they're not really, this country's not built to give this education to everybody on a fundamental level. They can't do it. Capitalism doesn't work if everybody wants to be the owner. If everybody wants to be the landlord, well, then who's going to pay the rent? If everybody wants to be the producer, well, who's going to be the consumer? If everybody wants to be the boss, well, who's going to be the worker? So they're going to always educate the masses to go work for other people, to rent houses and apartments for other people, to consume products. They need that. Do you know that the only thing that's holding the economy up right now is the American consumer's commitment, his brainwashed commitment to spending by any means necessary? You spend like a bunch of damn crackheads. We do. They trained us well. We spend like crackheads. Why do I say like crackheads? Well, because Americans are going into debt just to buy consumer items that they don't even really need. Credit card debt, because they're like, well, where's this money coming from? How's the consumer so resilient? The consumer's so resilient. They're spending so much money. The economy's booming because the consumer's so resilient. Well, the reason the consumer's resilient is because they're literally Pookie the crackhead. They got to keep spending. So when they run out of money, when they deplete their savings, they go to the credit card because they ain't getting the money from their jobs because wages are not going up. It's like think about this. Think about it. If your child comes home and they're 17 years old, and your child comes home with a $600 pair of shoes and they ain't got no damn job, what are you going to say to that child? Your 16-year-old daughter comes home with a pair of $600 red bottoms and you know she ain't got no job. What are you going to say to your daughter? Any good parent, only good parents can speak. If you're not a good parent, don't answer that question. You're going to say, where did you get that money? How did you get those shoes? Where'd you get those shoes from? Well, that's kind of like, that reminds me of the American consumer, because what that daughter would eventually have to reveal is that she's doing something that is unhealthy in many cases to get that money. Oh, well, I started dating JoJo, the dope dealer. You know, he's a nice guy. He bought me these red bottoms. Well, you know, JoJo gonna want, he's gonna eventually want some compensation. He's gonna want a return on investment. So that's why you would end up, if you're a good father, you pick up the phone and you call JoJo and you say, my daughter will be giving you back those shoes tomorrow. And I better not hear you talking to my daughter anymore. Right? At least that's what fathers did back in the day. I don't know what people are doing now, but that actually happened to me one time. I kid you not. I get a little funny sidetrack. I get real serious, so I'm gonna tell y'all a funny story. When I was 16, there was this little girl that I liked. I'm not gonna say her name because she might be watching or something. And I worked at Wendy's. I thought she was the cutest thing. So Valentine's Day came around. I didn't know much about girls. Nobody really taught me about girls. I was very confused when it came to girls. I had to read books and stuff. So Valentine's Day came, and she made a little joke like, hey, Boyce, are you my Valentine? Like, what are you going to get me for Valentine's Day? And I was like, oh my God, I didn't get her anything for Valentine's Day. So I wanted to impress this girl. So in my closet, I had this old camera. And I went into my closet and I grabbed this camera and I just like dusted it off and cleaned it up. And I gave her the camera as a gift. And I didn't understand, though, that like that's not that seemed like a big deal. It wasn't, because it was free. It was just sitting around. Nobody was using it. But her father was very concerned, right? So I get a call and he's like, is this Boyce? Yeah. This is I'm gonna call her Tiffany. I'm not gonna give her a real name. This is Tiffany's father. Tiffany from Wendy's? Yeah. I see you gave my daughter a camera. Yeah. But it was, we don't accept gifts like that. My daughter does not accept the gifts like that, so she'll be giving you back that camera tomorrow at school. Yeah, yes, sir. See, this was my experience, right? And I think this is a good thing, right? Because if there was any, errant thoughts that I might have had as a 16-year-old boy, they disappeared because her daddy was on the phone with me, letting me know that this little girl was protected. Right? Maybe you can sweet talk to mama, but you ain't gonna sweet talk to daddy. Right? This is why fathers matter. Right? I don't know why people don't believe this anymore, but they do. Right? But still, though, it's kind of the same way with the consumer. The consumer in America is buying things that they can't afford. They're literally, if you look at the data on credit card debt levels, it is through the roof. We've hit a record. We're several, I want to say a couple trillion or something. I can't remember. I got to go look up the number. But I remember seeing a headline. Consumer debt, credit card debt is at a record level. Student loan debt is at a record level. Consumer spending is out of control. but wages are staying pretty flat. They're not going up the way they're supposed to. So where are they getting the money? Well, they're borrowing it. They're going in debt to get it, right? So effectively, economic education is where you get enough skill, knowledge, and confidence such that when all the sheep are going this way, you're okay with going in the other direction. You have enough awareness and enough confidence because you were raised, you went to the Dr. Boyce School of Raising Black Children, and which means that from the time you were a child, somebody told you who you were, so you're not trying to fit in order to feel good about yourself. You already can feel good about yourself, even if everybody else is going in a different direction. So it's not just having the knowledge, which a lot of people don't have. It's having the courage to apply the knowledge and to be okay with dealing with whatever potential social stigmas may come from the fact that you're not the average Negro. I get it all the time. You see, if you go through the internet, you will see so many people that have made errant attempts to cyber bully me. Apparently, I guess I don't know what the hell they're doing, but they make videos, and the videos will have 80,000 views, and they'll say Dr. Boyce is a terrible person. Dr. Boyce is this. Dr. Boyce is a sucker. Dr. Boyce is a simp. Dr. Boyce is whatever. And what they don't understand is that when you're built a certain way, that stuff don't matter, because I know I'm right and you're probably wrong, but maybe you're right and I'm wrong. I don't give a shit. I just know that this is the direction God told me to go, and I'm gonna go in that direction. Period. That's it, right? And so this takes a certain amount of fortitude, because if you don't have the courage to listen to yourself, then you're going to follow the crowd, and then you're going to find out the crowd was wrong, and you should have listened to yourself from the very beginning. Sometimes you just have a special vision that God put inside of you that he didn't put inside your stupid best friend, or God put the vision in you and he didn't put it in your homeboy or whatever, or your spouse, right? And you have to have that ability to say, yeah, I hear what you're saying, I see what you are saying, I see what you are doing, and I'm not going to tell you not to, but I'm not doing that, right? So that extra economic education, that's the kicker, that's the key. And it's not complicated. It's really not complicated, actually. It's like, okay, if I want to be financially secure in America, there are basic things that financially secure people do that most people don't do. And it does require just a bit of discipline, a bit of planning, and a bit of training, right? Okay, well, they own real estate, they own stocks, they start businesses, they don't overspend, they don't spend money just to try to impress the neighbors. They're always thinking about the long-term economic vision. They do things as a family. They believe in things like generational wealth. They buy insurance, just little stuff like that, right? So don't following the crowd, if the crowd is ending up in hell in a handbasket, then why would you follow the crowd? And so what Dr. Anderson's saying here is that the mistake that our ancestors made is that they were somehow misled in the American dream to believe that if they learn how to read and write and do math, and they get the same educational skill as everybody else, they're going to get the same opportunities. All the data shows that is simply not the case. And in fact, that gap, that racial wealth gap, or that racial income gap, is growing. And the fact that it's growing, in my view, really speaks to the fact that you've lost even what your ancestors had in terms of resilience. They were doing things wrong because they just didn't know any better, but they had a type of resilience that we don't really have, right? And so intelligent Black people, this is what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to reshape that culture in your own space, reshape that culture in your own home. I want you talking to your kids different. Talk to them as if they're gonna be bosses, as if they're gonna be leaders, because that's what's really gonna be necessary to build that infrastructure that is required for this great opportunity that we have to build the community that we deserve. This is an opportunity. This is not a setback. This is not, it's an opportunity, and it's a challenge. It is not anything to be sad about or upset about or frustrated about. Crazy people are always going to exist. Ignorant Negroes are always going to exist. This is your opportunity to do something special and do something great. It doesn't require a lot of work. It just requires you to have a different vision. Okay. So anyway, let me keep reading here. And by the way, some of you are asking, oh yeah, so the stock options event tomorrow is if you go to drboyceprime101.com, you can get a discount. If you go to if you use the code bookclub25, all one word, you can get 25% off. And what we're going to talk about is selling stock options to generate income. So, and one promise I give you, this is something I can comfortably commit to, is by the time you walk out of there, if you have just a little bit of capital to invest, I can show you exactly where to put it, which will increase your income like this week. It's not something, and it's not me making things up. It's really true. So feel free to go to drboyceprime101.com, all one word, drboyceprime101.com. You can join us, and I use that code bookclub25, all one word. All right, so let me read here a little bit more. Education Education power is illusory because socioeconomic benefits did not fully track academic and achievement gains. By the 1950s, a black person with a college degree could not earn the salary of a white high school dropout. Black teachers earn less than half of what white teachers earn. Blacks with 1 or 2 college degrees work part-time as domestic servants in white homes or in low-paying jobs in white businesses. In 2017, young black college graduates are often unemployed or underemployed. Many grew up believing the myth. See, this is where Dr. Anderson, this is why Dr. Anderson's my he's my spiritual father, because we think alike. Because I haven't read this yet, but I bet you I know what he's going to say. Many grew up believing the myth that racism was a thing of the past and that all they needed was a good education to succeed in life. The reality that racism still exists is a shock to the young people who are trained to be chemists, engineers, writers, physicists, computer programmers, and biologists. Their skin color continues to be a handicap for them in the 21st century. Education can only be a potential for upward mobility. Oh my God, I love this. I love this. This is exactly what I was saying, right? There's nothing wrong with college and all that. Do it. Do it. Just know that it's the beginning. It opens the door. It doesn't build the whole house, right? So you get the education, but then you get that extra piece on top. You're good. You're in your way. You're in good shape at that point. Tell this to your kids. Have them watch this video. So education can only be a potential for upward mobility. The benefits are bound by race, which entraps blacks. There's that trap music again. Those who manage to get an education generally move up some, but do not achieve the same degree of socioeconomic mobility as whites. Blacks do not have a competitive alternative economy. Get away from the dungeon master. Get out of that damn dungeon. Just get out of the game. That's the solution. That's the answer. Okay? So he says that blacks need their own communities. Let me back up. Blacks do not have a competitive alternative economy or any place in which to use their skills and training to better themselves or their own group. That means not just getting the right skill, but thinking just as much about where you're applying that skill. Has anybody ever seen this video? Or heard the saying? I'm gonna make sure I say it right. They said that a bottle of water, if you buy it in a gas station, it might be 50 cents. That same bottle of water, if you buy it in a drugstore, it might cost $1.50. That same bottle of water, if you buy it on an airplane, it might cost you $4.50. And the moral of the story is that it's the same water. The only thing that changed was the location of the water, right? In different environments, that same bottle of water will have a different price. So a lot of you are in situations, in relationships, economic relationships, maybe personal relationships, where the counterparties in those relationships do not see your value. You go to work, your boss isn't paying you what you deserve. You're not getting the opportunities you deserve. Maybe you're married or dating somebody who doesn't see your worth, right? Maybe you have a product that you're trying to sell and people don't see the value of the product. Well, one of the solutions that Dr. Anderson is referring to, at least this is my interpretation here, is that perhaps rather than looking outward and complaining about the fact that they don't see your worth, turn inward and say, why am I trying to sell pearls to swine? Why am I trying to offer something of tremendous value to people who can't see the value? Why am I trying to sell a rare diamond in a dusty pawn shop? Right. So a lot of times you would be shocked by how much additional value you can extract from what you have to offer the world by simply getting out of that situation and starting from scratch somewhere else, taking that value elsewhere. And I know this personally. I know this from, I don't know, relationships. You know, I've been dumped before. I've had times where I dated a woman who didn't see my value, but now I'm married to the most beautiful woman in the world. At least I felt like she was, right. When it came to my academic background, when I was at Syracuse, I had a lot of skill. You know, I was hot stuff. I was the only black person on the planet to get a PhD in finance. Then during the year I graduated, but they didn't see my value. They didn't see my worth. I was doing great work at 34, 35 years old, writing great books, making an impact. They didn't see my worth. I had to go somewhere where they would see my worth. And my worth exploded because I went to places where people love me because of who I am, rather than being in places where people simply tolerated me despite who I am. So find places where they know your worth. And what Dr. Anderson is saying is that the solution for Black people is to be able to develop the infrastructure for alternative economic systems. You got to get out of the trap. That's how you win the game, is to play a different game, design a new game. Don't play their game. If I feel like you're setting me up in a game that I'm not going to win, I will just not play anymore. Seriously. I did that. I did a lot of stuff with Damon Dash, who worked with Jay-Z a lot. And we used to do something called Intelligent Boss Moves, where Damon and I would do regular conversations. We did probably a couple hundred of them. And I like Dame. Dame was a great guy. But one thing Dame would do, he has a very aggressive personality, and he would back you into corners with questions he would ask, or the way he would structure a conversation. And I could see it coming from a mile away. So he tried to back me into saying something about one of his baby's mamas or something. I forgot. It was something goofy. I forgot what it was. But anyway, he was like, so wouldn't you say that if a man does blah, 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 that you should do blah, 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 blah? And I was like, and I saw what was coming, and I was like, no, I don't know. And he's like, well, come on, you have to answer. Don't you think the blah, 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 blah? And I was like, I don't know. I have no response. And he was like, come on, Dr. Boyce, you know that blah, blah, blah. And if this happened, and it was kind of a comment. I guess he was looking for me to make a comment where I would support his side of the story. But I'm smart enough to know every story has multiple sides, right? His side, her side, and the truth. And I was like, I ain't getting involved in nobody's baby mama drama, especially some stuff that's already public and in the news and all that stuff. So I saw that I was being pushed into a corner. And the other thing too is I have one of my trauma responses is that as a kid, my father was so tough that when I see bullying, I identify immediately, and I instantly stiffen my back. And I'm like, no, you're not. I'm not a punk. You're not pushing me over. Right. But still, though, so part of that was a trauma response. But the other part of it was, no, I'm not playing this game with you. Like, this is not a conversation that I'm even interested in being a part of, because the only answer that you've left me to give, you already told me that X plus 2 is 7. So the only answer I can give is 5. So rather than giving you 5, I'm just going to say, I don't know. I'm not answering. I have nothing to say. Right. So effectively what I'm saying is that this is white supremacy. This is what they do to you. They put you in this box, and they put you in situations where you pretty much kind of only have one way to respond, right? Which is why on the corporate plantation, even though you theoretically have all these other options of things you can do, you're really kind of stuck in a trap, right? If I've trained your community, and I've trained your family, and trained your culture to commit the horrific crimes against humanity that we commit on our children, to abuse our children the way we've been trained to abuse our children, the kids are trapped. And let me explain what I mean by that. If I raise you and you're my son or you're my daughter, and I don't invest any money on your behalf, right? Even though I've listened to people like Dr. Boyce who tell me about things like a $5 a day investing plan, who've literally said that if I put the same amount of money into the S&P 500 that I put into my car, you would have $100,000 by the time you're 20. I ignore that, right? So I don't give you any capital. I don't have any insurance policy. So if I die, you're going to be asked out. You're going to be doing GoFundMe accounts. I don't make sure you get an adequate education. I don't make sure that you are trained in who you are. I don't put you in any space or any scenario where you learn anything about economic survival in this country. And I allow you to be swept away by this culture that is incredibly toxic and unhealthy. Then to some extent, I put you in the trap. I've dipped you right into butter and put you in the frying pan so they can cook you up and eat you up. That's what's being done. Because if you look at these kids, look at our kids that come out of the Chicago public school system, or you can look at Philadelphia, you can look at New York, and think about. I mean, I want you to think about this. What kind of future can you have when you are leaving high school? You can't read at grade level, you can't write at grade level, you can't do math at grade level. You have no skill. You can't do like the Mexican kids can do and go fix cars or clean, or go and repair houses or none of that stuff, right? And so you have no skill, you have no education, you have no resources, you have no family, you have no self-esteem. How's that movie gonna end? How's that? I mean, how's that? How else could it end in anything other than a tragedy? And I think that what ends up frustrating me, which leads me to just end up yelling and screaming every single week, is that it bothers me a lot because it's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. It really is. It's like watching a massive tragedy unfold right before your very eyes, and you want to scream scream at the theater, scream at the screen, and tell the like, don't go inside the house. The monster's going to cut your head off. And she just walks right in, and you watch it happen every time. And that's what I feel when I'm watching our community. And so effectively, a big part of the reason that I talk to you all every week is to share what I am seeing, because I think a lot of you get it, right? A lot of you understand. A lot of you are prepared. And I want to share everything that I see in hopes that it can help somebody, because I think that these problems are quite solvable, but it won't be solvable if you don't believe that any solution exists. You know, when we've got the Negro naysayers who literally get angry at every, like, I think I put something on Twitter about, investing. I said, well, if you, I think I was talking to our 20-year-old, and I said, yeah, I think the biggest mistake I made financially is that when I was your age, I didn't just take my little extra spare money, all the money I blew on shoes and nonsense. I should have just bought like little shares of stock, just bought some Apple and whatever. And I said, Apple stock is $162. And when I was 20, it was like 45 cents. And I said, so I said, if I just bought some, and it wasn't like we didn't know Apple was a big company back then. Apple was very big in the 90s, right? So it would have made sense as an investment. And I just shared that statement on my Twitter, and most of the comments were positive, but then I saw people that really seemed to get angry, or they were like, well, how do you know what the next Apple is? How do you pick the next Apple? And it bothered me as a finance guy, because I wanted to kind of say, this is investing. It's not gambling. Like, it's not picking the right horse, right? It's consistent investing across the board in a broad portfolio of stocks that have some chance of doing well. No, you don't have to pick the next Apple, but you know that one of them is going to be the next Apple. And if you're not in the game, then you're not ever going to be able to benefit. So economically speaking, we fall behind because wealthy people that are building generational wealth, it's like they are in race cars going 150 miles an hour, and we're trying to keep up on foot. That's what it's like when you completely jump on the off-ramp on investing and you don't participate at all. You are at a huge disadvantage, because when I tell you that every single study says that being in the stock market is the number one variable that separates the rich from the middle class, I repeat that 10,000 times because I need y'all to hear that one fact if you hear nothing else that I say to you. So you've got to invest for your kids. You've got to invest for your kids. You have to invest for your kids, because the world ain't playing with them. The world is not playing with them. I mean, there's so much stress and pain and trauma and anxiety they're going to go through when they get out in this competitive world, and they are not ready. We're not getting our kids ready because somehow we thinking white folks going to do the damn job, and they're not. Only thing they'll do is prepare your child for slavery. They will fatten them up like a KFC chicken, put some butter and flour on their body and dip them in the frying pan and cook them up and eat them up. That's what capitalism does to people who do not prepare their children. So the question you must ask yourself today, the question I ask you to ask yourself right now is, are you getting your kids ready? And if so, what is your plan? What is your plan? And if you don't have any kids, then what are you doing for yourself? Some of y'all are young, but you're going to have kids one day. And I can tell you this too. If you're young, if you're 25, 24, 23, well, you know what? The things you do now will impact whether or not you can be an adequate father or husband or mother or whatever for the kids that you have in the future. You do understand that, right? You do understand that the things you do when you're young impact the freedom and flexibility that you have later. I heard Michael B. Jordan make a statement that made me respect him so much. I understood his mindset, and I like the guy because I remember this goofy lady called him. She said he used to be corny in school and all that, and that annoyed me because she sounded like those people that are cool today but losers tomorrow because they don't plan or they don't have any work ethic or any consistency. They think that working hard is corny. Well, Michael B. Jordan is one of the biggest movie stars on the planet because he had a plan and he busted his butt to achieve achieve his goal. I honor him for that. And one thing that I heard him say that I loved is he said that that I understood a long time ago that if I sacrifice now, I can live a life that nobody else can live. If I'm working hard when everybody else is out partying, then I can get ahead of everybody else. If I make a plan and I bust, but Kobe Bryant was the same way, right? If I bust my butt, then I can be in a position where I will be super successful later on down the road, and I can live the rest of my life off the fruits of my labor. That's why he's one of the biggest movie stars in the world. That's why Kobe Bryant died a legend. And the thing about it is that this should be the common theme of all of our people. Our kids can't play around. Our kids have to get these messages other than these stupid messages about what it means to be cool and chill today and to fit in today, but you're destroying your future in the process because you're not doing anything that's planning or preparing yourself for the long haul. So when you do those things, when you're 20, 21 years old, I got called corny like Michael B. Jordan. I totally got what he was saying. I got called corny. I got called a nerd. I got called all this stuff. I had people ask me, well, why aren't you having no fun, whatever? I said, no, I'm going to have all my fun. It's just my fun's going to be later on down the road. I'll be having fun when you're still suffering because you did not make a sacrifice. You did not prepare, right? And that's exactly what happened. By the time I was about 30 years old, I was making six figures, and it was up from there. I make a lot more than I made back then, and my life has been awesome. And the reason my life is awesome is because I sacrificed like crazy when I was 19, 20 years old. The other thing, too, is that when I became a father, I was able to be a much better father because I made plans and preparations. I did not have a long pile of regrets from a long wasted life where I'm 50 years old trying to do things I should have did when I was 25. Okay. So these things, to me, these are basic ideas. There's nothing complicated about that. But the problem that you're dealing with, and this is what you have to overcome, is that they have worked so hard to build a culture around Black laziness, shiftlessness, weakness, and lack of preparation. They encourage you to not prepare and then feel sorry for yourself when everything goes wrong. They train you to live in it with to not think about what you eat and to be as unhealthy as possible. And then when COVID comes along and obese people are dying from preventable illnesses because our bodies are not where they need to be, our immune systems are not where they need to be, they come along and they say, here, just take this shot, take this pill. It's just racism. Look at what's happening to Black people. They position you and train you to just be victims. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what they do. They it's literally planned victimhood, because if they can keep you as a victim, then they can keep on making money by being your protector. If they keep you as a victim, they will keep being able to get resources out of you. The only way you are an asset to them, I'm not an asset to them because I work for me. I work for my people. So I understand why they would ice me out. Right. But the only way you can be an asset to them is if they can use you. If your existence benefits them, right? If you're buying their consumer products because you're not thinking about owning any of your own businesses, you're sending your children to their schools because you don't feel like you can run your own. You are committing to their infrastructure and their way of thinking because you don't have any way of thinking of your own. That's what the nature of Black people is, and it's a pimp hoe relationship. Thank you, David. That's a great term. It's PIMP. That's what it is. It's pimping 101, right? So I'm just going to ask you this before we get done. And somebody said my microphone's going in and out. Can y'all hear me okay? Kobila says my microphone's going out, in and out. Is my microphone okay? Let me know if it's okay. All I ask you today as we walk out of here is I think we should make a commitment to not being pimped. That's what that means, right? Are you serving you and yours, or are you serving him and his? I think that's a good message that Dr. Anderson would want us to carry away today. And also, education is extremely important, but I think that the right education is more important than just any education. Not all educational processes are created equally. I say this to you as an educator. Okay. So anyway, guys, we are done. It was so much fun. I appreciate you hanging out with us today. We will be back next week for the book club. Also, if you haven't done this yet, you can just text the word stock to 31996. I'll send you our $5 a day investing plan. I'll send you a list of AI stocks that I like, things like that. Also, my book is The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. There's also flashcards and a workbook that goes with it. So feel free to go to drboycebooks.com if you'd like to take a look at drboycebooks.com. My wife's books are there as well, so you can search for the word Alicia and find her stuff there. And the book is also on Audible. You guys asked for it to be on Audible, so I put it on Audible. I can't get Dr. Henderson to put his books on Audible, but I'm gonna try to keep talking to his wife to see if she'll let me have somebody read the book and put it on Audible. If not, then I'll just read it to you out loud, and we'll just keep doing this. Okay. And last but not least, the tomorrow night we're doing stock options. That is the training that we're doing. It's all built around one idea: generating extra income each week from selling stock options, not buying. We're not doing the buy side. We're literally going to focus on the sale side. When you walk out of there, I will show you how to increase your income this week, but you have to have just a little bit of capital to invest. But I'll show you a direct line where you can do exactly what I do, and it will put money into your bank account. It's something that I've been doing for a long time. So I love teaching that, and it's a part of our Prime program. So if you go to drboyceprime101.com, that's the intro that we're doing tomorrow. But if you actually want to get in free, you can just feel free to join the Prime program, and your first month in the program would get applied to the cost of the event. So it's totally up to you. You can either do the one-time thing, or you can become a member. All the students love it. There's money back guarantee. So feel free to take a look. So the two websites you can write down are drboyceprime.com and drboyceprime101.com. The 101 is the 1 day, and the Prime is the program. So feel free to take a look at all that. All right, guys. Thank you so much. It was real. It was great. And